The impact of the cost of living crisis is having on my constituents in Liverpool West Derby and across this country is truly harrowing and a shameful injustice inflicted by this government. An article in the Liverpool Echo this week talks about the perfect storm facing people in our city of soaring energy costs, record inflation, and all against the backdrop of a decade of conservative austerity that has cut our support services to the bone. According to research from Feeding Liverpool, around 14% of households in Liverpool experience fuel poverty, which is significantly higher than the England average, and 32% of adults in Liverpool are food insecure, where food is a source of worry, frustration and stress. That's over 150,000 people in Liverpool alone. This was all before the inflation costs started to spiral. It's a humanitarian crisis which demands permanent solutions, not tinkering with a system that's broken. An example of this broken system was highlighted by my good friend Tony Cavaney, a cabbie from Liverpool, who sent me this message last week. Ian, an old woman in the taxi this morning said she had to get out the house to get warm. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But we all should be raging with anger, because it's political choices by this government that enable this scandalous situation so many of our people find themselves in our communities, and this crisis will affect generations to come. I spoke in this house before Christmas about what Professor Ian Sinner, a paediatrician at the fantastic Alderley Children's Hospital in my constituency, said to me, and I quote, "A big issue at the moment is the interplay between food and fuel poverty, eat or heat. In essence, babies and infants in the coldest houses will spend their calories trying not to get hypothermia rather than utilising the energy to grow their body systems and lay the foundations for a healthy life course." It's shameful. Fuel poverty is a political choice. Hunger is a political choice. All choices made by this government and inflicted by the Chancellor in particular, like the £20 a week cut to universal credit and his current failure to intervene in the spiral costs of fuel bills, are political choices. Many households are already seeing significant energy prices rise, and now the household energy price cap is expected to rise by up to 50% in just a matter of weeks' time in April. Fuel poverty campaigners estimate this increase will drive 2 million people into fuel poverty and impact older households already seeing the suspension of the triple lock on pensions. By voting for the motion today, the government could introduce a windfall tax on the profits of North Sea oil and gas producers as a much-needed first step towards funding a national package of support for households. But this crisis has been long in the making, and we need a government to bring about systemic change. Trade unions and campaigners have long argued that the privatisation of the energy sector has resulted in high profits while the public foot the bill when costs rise. People who cannot afford the extortionate bills pay with damage to their health, livelihoods and well-being. And workers in the industry are being made to pay to a tax on their terms and conditions by industry bosses. This has pushed many workers into fuel and food poverty themselves. We saw this when British Gas used fiery hire tactics against their own workers at the height of lockdown, and today, with OVO, they were threatening to make 1,700 to 2,000 staff redundant at the same time as, according to United Union's estimates, the top directors of OVO took 4.6 million off the company's salaries and benefits in the last 5 years. It's broken. We need action from the government to transform this shocking situation. Public ownership, decarbonisation in the energy sector and the urgent retrofitting and insulating of houses to bring down energy costs in our communities. The practice of bailing out and subsidising private energy suppliers without the benefits of public ownership and control is wasteful and unjust. And research by Greenwich University's Public Service International showed that public ownership of water, energy, grids and the Royal Mail would save UK households £7.8 billion a year, pay for itself within 7 years. The technology and solutions exist. What is lacking is the political will from a government whose mission is always to prioritise private profits over the well-being of the people they are supposed to represent. And we don't have to look far. Across the borders to Wales, where the Welsh Government are going to set up a publicly owned energy provider within the near future. Another way is possible, Mr Deputy Speaker. I urge the Government to back this motion and bring some much-needed relief quickly to worried communities across this country, and then have the bravery to tackle the systemic failing that is driving this humanitarian crisis and alleviate the suffering of millions. We cannot continue to let this plight continue when it can be eradicated by the correct political choices. Thank you, Mr. Deputy.